This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Gila Pablo and welcome to ASEAN in Focus.
And hello, I'm Crystal Ann Ballesteros bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines, Myanmar's junta marked 1 year in power on Tuesday despite fresh foreign sanctions as demonstrators promised to rally against the army and its bloody crackdown.
The nightly armada of bobbing green lights from speedboats has all but disappeared near the site of last week's oil spill in the Gulf of Thailand, as devastated local fishermen brace for years of lost income.
Nearly a dozen poachers were jailed by an Indonesian court Thursday over the 2020 killing of 5 critically endangered Sumatran elephants and the illegal trade of their lucrative tusks.
Philippine Olympic Committee President Representative Abraham Bambol Tolentino joined the entire country in celebrating the historic achievement of the national women's football team, which booked a first-ever berth in the FIFA Women World Cup 2023.
First on our news today, 1 year ago on the 1st of February, a powers grab have sent Myanmar into a spiral. Armed forces seized control of the government, effectively ending a brief democratic interlude and setting the stage for months of bloodshed. That's what's this.
နေတိုင်းဒီမတရားမှုဖြစ်လူမတိတူတည်တဲ့စစ်ကောင်စီကတပ်ဖြတ်ခံတဲ့လူပေါင်းများစွာရှိနေတယ်။တိုင်းဒေသတွေမှာလည်းစစ်ပွဲဖြစ်ပွားနေတဲ့ဒေသတွေမှာလည်းလက်နက်အင်အားအလုံးကြီးသုံးပြီးတော့ဒီလူတွေမြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာဘာလို့ဒီလိုမျိုးတပ်ဖြတ်နေလဲ။စစ်ပွဲတိုင်းသူတိုင်းဒေသဖြစ်တဲ့စစ်ပွဲမှာရှိနေတယ်။ဒီနေ့ဒီချိန်မြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာရှိတဲ့လူလူတွေကစစ်ကောင်စီအကြမ်းဖက်ဖိနှိပ်မှုကိုအချိန်နဲ့မျှခံနေရတော့ ဒီလိုတယောက်ချင်းတွေဒီအခြေခံဒီရပိုင်ခွင့်တွေကိုကိုယ်ကတို့ဒီအာဏာနဲ့ချုပ်ကန်ပြီးလူဟိုကလစ်ဆန်နေလို့ဆက်ဆံမှုတို့လုံးနေတာလူရအခုဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ရရပြောလို့ရှိရင်လမ်းပြီးခွေးသက်တာစိတ်ပိုင်းဆိုင်ရာလူနေမှုနေထားရအားလုံးကအဲ့ချင်းကျွန်တော်ထောင်လုံးရဲ့ဆယ်စုနှစ်လောက်ကို1990ကျွန်တော်မာတုံပြေးပြီးတော့နေထားရောက်တော့
တနေ့ကြာပြီးတဲ့နောက်ပိုင်းအခုလက်ရှိကာလမှာကအလုံးလက်မဲ့ဖြစ်တာမဖြစ်တာထက်ဒီစစ်ပွဲတွေဒါဒီမျိုးတွေကိုရောက်လာမယ်ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကိုယ့်အသက်ကိုဘယ်လိုကောက်ွယ်ရမလဲကိုမိသားစုကိုဘယ်လိုကောက်ွယ်ရမလဲဒီဟာတွေကပဲခေါင်းထဲမှာပို့ပြီးကြီးစိုးနေပေါ့နော်အလုပ်ရခြင်းမရခြင်းထက်
A year later, the country's junta is struggling to contain the backlash unleashed by its power grab with daily clashes and swats of the country outside of its control. Almost 1,500 civilians have been killed and over 11,000 arrested in its ongoing crackdown, according to a local monitor, with rights groups accusing junta troops of torture and extrajudicial killings. But for a pro-democracy movement angered by the military's power grab, ending its decades-long entanglement in Myanmar politics once and for all is the only option. The Philippine government has placed Myanmar under Alert Level 4, where all Filipinos are advised to evacuate. Here's His Excellency and former Philippine Ambassador to Myanmar, Eduardo Kapunan Jr. Let's watch this.
Parang pagkasundo sila. So, yun ngayon po ang thrust ng ASEAN na pagpuin sila para mag-usap-usap.
Our Foreign Secretary, Teodoro Locsin, is apparently supporting, of course, democracy, and the ousted civilian leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, was quite vocal about it. Is that the right approach in your view? And should the Philippines or ASEAN as a whole be doing more, do you think, to support the protests in the streets or to put an end to chaos there?
Actually, as of now, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, they're supporting the old government, the duly elected democratic government. The other members of ASEAN are still parang kinakapa pa nila ang sitwasyon. Which brings ASEAN to a very peculiar situation. Kasi ASEAN, hindi nag-decide kundi consensus di ba?
Yes.
So, after the meeting of ASEAN last June, ASEAN came up with a 5-point consensus recommendation. And none of these 5 were actually, well, sa action ng Myanmar, because si Minong Lang yung general ng commanding general ng Myanmar attended the conference, and the perception was that karoon ng consensus dun sa 5 points na yun. But pagbalik sa Myanmar ng nila, they said that we can only comply with the 5 points of ASEAN if the situation stabilizes.
Yes.
Now, it's really a question of how do you define stability? Diba? And stability vis-a-vis whom? When in fact they were closing their doors against the anti-government faction.
Meron po ba tayong triage plan for Filipinos there in case they get caught in these chaos, disasters, or calamities?
We have our own contingency plan.
Yes.
Which we keep to our hearts. Kasi nga ayaw din namin ipalabas muna na nag-i-evacuate ang Pilipino because of the military junta. So the cover is all COVID. COVID yan lahat.
Okay.
So we have, yung una is, how do we communicate with the Filipinos? May contingency plan na rin yan. Saan namin sila dadalhin kung makuha na namin sila? Meron yung plano na yan. Saan namin sila sasakay? Kung sarado ng airport, hindi na pwede. Paano ang gagawin namin? So, na-cover na namin yan sa aming contingency plan. Sorry, hindi ko lang ma-describe masyado kasi medyo I keep it confidential sa namin.
Junta troops were blamed for a holiday massacre that left the charred remains of more than 30 people on a highway in the east of the country, including 2 staff members of the Save the Children charity. Earlier in January, it ordered air and artillery strikes on a state capital in the east to prevent anti-coup fights from seizing ground in the town. The generals have promised a return to multi-party democracy and fresh elections by 2023.
Meanwhile, the United States, Britain, and Canada hit up Myanmar justice officials with sanctions on Monday on the 1-year anniversary of a military coup. The U.S. Treasury Department placed sanctions on Attorney General Tida Wu, Supreme Court Chief Justice Tuntun Wu, and Anti-Corruption Commission Chairman Utin Wu, whom it's said were closely involved in the politically motivated prosecution of opposition leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Britain said it was imposing sanctions against Tida Wu Tin U, and a third person. U Tin So, chair of the country's election commission. British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said Myanmar's military regime has attempted to terrorize the people of Myanmar into submission. The Canadian government in a statement said the military regime had shown no sign of reversing course on the humanitarian and political situation in Myanmar in the past year. It slapped sanctions on the same three regime senior members as Washington, saying they are using their respective roles to abuse the role of law and remove political opposition, thus contributing to a grave breach of international peace and the deteriorating security situation. The United States also separately imposed sanctions against several business leaders and companies accused of providing financial support to Myanmar's military regime.
The UN Chief Antonio Guterres, marking the first anniversary of the military coup in Myanmar, said that he stands in solidarity with the people, calling for a return to an inclusive democratic society. In a statement issued by his spokesperson, the Secretary General outlined the crisis which have resulted due to an intensification of violence, major human rights violations, rising poverty, and hunger. Let's watch this.
In the past year, there's been an intensification in violence, a deepening of the human rights and humanitarian crises, and a rapid rise of poverty in Myanmar. The multiple vulnerabilities of all people across Myanmar and its regional implications require an urgent response. Access to people in need is critically important for the United Nations and partners to continue to deliver on the ground. Armed forces and all stakeholders must respect human rights and fundamental freedoms. The people of Myanmar need to see concrete results. And you heard what Noeline Hazer had to say on this as well. Also on Myanmar, the 2022 Myanmar Humanitarian Response Plan is requesting a record $826 million to reach an unprecedented 6.2 million women, children, and men, out of a total of 14.4 million people in need in the country. The new plan reflects the political, human rights, and humanitarian crisis that is now touching all corners of the country, posing grave protection risks for civilians, limiting access to services, and leading to greater food insecurity.
On the other news, Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion said the country may forgo the use of the alert level system in curbing the COVID-19 infection by March, as the recent Omicron variant has resulted in milder cases. Let's take a look.
Hopefully, we can move to alert level 1 by the end of February, and eventually by March, there should, ang tingin ko dito, eventually we can remove all these alert levels, no, and just come up with a protocol, or basic minimum health standard protocol, no, moving forward. Pero we're seeing that this alert level 1 is even possible towards the end of February, March, no. Alert level 2, syempre tataas yung capacity dito sa mga pwedeng pumasok sa restaurants, may mga ibang pwede nang magbukas, no, under alert level 2. Under alert level, bawal pa rin yata dito ang mga concerts at iba pa. Pero once we move to alert level 1, then we can open all of these things up, no. So more businesses will open. Ang kagandahan dito yung tourism na medyo was closed for the last 22 months. Malaking bagay yan. Thailand has already adopted no quarantine, so kasama na rin tayo dyan. So I expect the tourism sector to really start to pick up. And it's good timing kasi dito sa yung bagyo na tinamaan yung Visayas at parte ng Mindanao, mabubuhay ulit dito ang tourism. No? Maraming gustong pumasok dito, especially as we come close to March, no? Summer period na yan, maraming turista pwedeng pumasok dito sa mga different islands natin. So that will open up and that will help many of our micro and small entrepreneurs na halos kapit sila sa buong ecosystem ng tourism. Maski yung mga malaking hotels na bound sa utang, at least mabubuhay ulit sila. So masaya na, they're happy now. Pero syempre, yung ibang hotel are being challenged kasi mawawala yung quarantine facility nila, no? Ginagamit pang quarantine. But I was telling them that this is just a transition. Eventually, we will now see businessmen wanting to come here to invest, turista. So that will help. No, that will greatly help.
Metro Manila, along with Cavite, Bulacan, Rizal, Batanes, Biliran, Southern Leyte, and Basilan, is under more relaxed level or alert level. From February 1 to 15, under alert levels, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases outlines the quarantine measures depending on the level of infection in certain areas. Among these are the allowed operating capacity, activities, and establishments for a specific period. Meanwhile, Concepcion said that several private sector groups will be meeting in 3 weeks to develop an exit plan, which is essentially a forward-looking strategy to foster economic recovery amid the pandemic.
The no vaccination, no ride policy for commuters in the National Capital Region will be lifted starting Tuesday as COVID-19 Alert Level 2 takes effect. The policy was among the measures implemented by the government to prevent the transmission of the highly transmissible Omicron variant. The Department of Transportation order was anchored on a Metro Manila Council resolution and ordinances of NCR local government units, and in line with the order of President Rodrigo Duterte to limit the movement of unvaccinated individuals. The no vaccination, no ride policy will be enforced only when NCR is under alert levels 3, 4, or 5 as determined by the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases. DOTR Secretary Art Tugade reminded that minimum health protocols in public transport must still be observed to prevent another surge.
Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh has tasked the Ministry of Transport to quickly repatriate Vietnamese stranded abroad. The government chief asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to direct representative agencies abroad to monitor the situation of the Vietnamese in the host countries to offer timely assistance and create favorable conditions for them to return home for tech. Around 600 Vietnamese people are being stranded in foreign countries, including 200 in Saudi Arabia, 150 in Angola, and 85 in the United Arab Emirates, according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
A National Center for Geriatric Health and Research Institute would soon be created to ensure that holistic health services are available to all senior citizens all over the country. During Monday's plenary session at the House of Representatives, a total of 201 lawmakers voted in favor of the House Bill 10697, which would establish dedicated medical facilities and geriatric specialty centers across all regions. House Committee on Health Chairperson Angelina Tan said the NCGHRI would be mandated to establish, operate, equip, and maintain an integrated medical institution specializing in geriatric health services. Geriatrics is a branch of medicine that focuses on the health care of elderly people through the prevention and treatment of their diseases and disabilities. Speaker Lord Alan Velasco, the author of the bill, said specialized geriatric care will lower the average length of hospital stay among elderly patients from 7.3 days to 6.7 days, minimize hospital costs to around 50,000 Philippine pesos per patient, and improve the overall care of senior citizens. Stay tuned for more news. We'll be right back after these short messages.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang angking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
And you're still watching ASEAN in Focus. The nightly armada of bobbing green lights from squid boats has all but disappeared near the site of last week's oil spill in the Gulf of Thailand, as devastated local fishermen brace for years of lost income. Let's take a look.
พอบอกน้ำมันลวกปุ๊บเนี่ยตอนนี้พ่อค้าก็เทหมดละอาหารทะเลเนี่ยที่หาขึ้นมาเนี่ยคือซื้อไหมซื้อแต่ซื้อในราคาที่ถูกลงนะอย่างหมึกเนี่ยจะได้28 300อะไรเงี้ยตอนนี้200ก็ไปยากละก่อนน้ำมันรั่วเนี่ยจะได้กัน7โล8โล9โล10โล10กว่าโลอย่างล่าสุดเมื่อวันซืนที่ผมออกไปชั่วโมงเดียวได้3โลแต่เมื่อวานออกไปทั้งวันได้5ตัวที่มันหายแบบทันตาเห็นน่ะเขาฉีดสารลงไปใต้ทะเลใช่ไหมแล้วอะไรมันจะมีปีที่แล้วมันมีที่ไหนไม่มีแค่พอหากินกันไปก็แก๊กใช่ไหมแล้วมาปีนี้นึกดูดิแล้วมันมากเท่าไหร่ทางวิชาการดีมาตรวจน้ำก็ดีมาตรวจดินก็ดีหมดละแมงวีแมงวันอย่างเราพูดไม่ได้เขาไม่ได้มาถามเราเนี่ยใช่ไหมถ้าเขามาถามลงมาถามพวกรากหญ้าเลยว่าเป็นยังไงที่หาปีนูแหละเป็นอะไรเหมือนเดิมเพราะปั๊บข้างหลังมันข้างหลังเนี่ยมันเป็นลงหลังไง
The Thai Navy is scrambling to clean up Tuesday night spill from a pipeline that leaked at least 60 tons of crude oil 20 kilometers or 12 miles off the coast of Rayong province. Authorities have declared Mae Rampong Beach a disaster zone and closed it to the swimmers as crews in yellow plastic protective suits begin the cleanup. Rayong resorts and seafood restaurants say the spill is a nail in the coffin for their businesses after the tourism industry's continued pandemic downturn. For longtime fishermen who have been asked to halt their catches for at least a month in exchange for emergency payments, there is a feeling of deja vu. They recall the long road to environmental and economic recovery after another pipeline leak in the same area in 2013. A dozen ships are spraying dispersant chemicals, and so far more than 80,000 liters or 21,000 gallons has been doused over the affected area. Star Petroleum Refining Public Company Limited, the operator of the pipeline and whose major shareholder is Giant Chevron, said it was trying to minimize the leak's ecological impacts using booms. but satellite imagery shows the slick had already spread to an area of 51 square kilometers or 20 square miles on Sunday. There are also fears a national park on the island of Koh Samet will be affected, and Thai authorities Sunday deployed absorbent material to Aupra Beach as a precaution.
The National Bureau of Investigation, or NBI, has a month to report on the alleged slay attempt on presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. made on video-focused social media platform TikTok. Department of Justice, or DOJ Secretary Minardo Guevara said on Monday the government investigates all threats on public officials, past and present, including candidates running for public office upon prompt receipt of information. I quote, 30 days is our standard reporting period, but the NBI immediately reports if it finds something early enough. End of quote, Guevara told reporters via text message. He said the DOJ Office of Cybercrime and NBI may also track down individuals who threaten to kill or rape public officials. Vice President Leonor Robredo, who is also running for president, was likewise the subject of death threats before. The TikTok user allegedly posted, I quote, "We are meeting every day to plan for BBM's or Bongbong Marcos assassination. Get ready." Lawyer Vic Rodriguez, Marcos' chief of staff, said in a statement on Sunday, I quote, "We are not cowered by such threat." And he said all their campaign activities will continue.
Meanwhile, 11 people have been arrested after a deadly clash at a nightclub in Indonesia's easternmost region, police said on Saturday. The fight erupted on Tuesday in Sorong, a relatively quiet city in West Papua province, and 18 people were killed, most of them in a blaze at the Double O nightclub. Indonesia's national police had earlier said the death toll was 19, but later corrected the number following a development in the field. We have arrested 11 people, West Papua Police Chief Tornagogo Sihombing said at a press conference, adding 2 of them were believed to have been involved in the stabbing of a victim. The 9 others were allegedly behind the arson that killed the nightclub's visitors and employees, including a guest DJ and band members. Tuesday's clash was part of an ongoing feud between 2 ethnic groups and followed a misunderstanding, according to the police, and escalated to involve machetes, arrows, and Molotov cocktails.
Ethiopian Airlines is set Tuesday to operate the Boeing 737 MAX for the first time since a crash nearly 3 years ago killed all 157 people on board and triggered the global grounding of the aircraft. Flight 302 from Addis Ababa to Nairobi plunged 6 minutes after takeoff into a field southeast of the Ethiopian capital in March 2019, 5 months after a similar crash in Indonesia left 189 people dead. The twin disasters and subsequent scrutiny of the 737 MAX's faulty flight handling system, known as the Maneuvering Characteristic Augmentation System, or MCAS, amounted to the worst crisis in Boeing's history. State-owned Ethiopian Airlines, the jewel of the economy of Africa's second most populous country, had long said it would be the last carrier to use the single-aisle jets again. In a statement to AFP, the airline said the decision to resume 737 MAX flights came after intense recertification by regulators in the United States, the European Union, China, and Ethiopia. At first, A first passenger flight will take place on Tuesday.
Going back to Indonesia, as nearly a dozen poachers were jailed by an Indonesian court Thursday over the 2020 killing of 5 critically endangered Sumatran elephants and the illegal trade of their lucrative tusks as the Southeast Asian archipelago's battle with wildlife crime continues. Rampant deforestation has reduced the elephants' habitat and brought them into increasing conflict with humans, while their ivory tusks are prized in the illegal wildlife trade. Authorities found the dead elephants killed by electrocution and with their tusks removed in early 2020 at a palm oil plantation in the remote village of Tui Piria in Aceh, which sits on the tip of Sumatra Island. Aceh Jaya District Court in Sumatra handed 9 men jail sentences between 10 months and nearly 3.5 years for the poaching. 2 others were jailed for almost 2 years for their involvement in the trade of the elephants' tusks. Aceh's Natural Resources Conservation Agency estimates the animals died 2 months before their discovery in January 2020 from high voltage electrocution by a fence intentionally installed at the palm oil plantation. The investigation lasted for more than a year and resulted in police arresting the perpetrators in August and September last year.
They said Army border patrols arrested a total of 235 Myanmar job seekers who arrived in 2 groups in Sangkla Budi and Muang districts on Monday. According to Bangkok Post, about 2:30 p.m., 31 men and 19 women were arrested near Song Karia, the Mu 8 village in Tambon Nongli in Sangkla Budi. According to AFP, Myanmar workers have long sought jobs in neighboring Thailand. Pre-pandemic, an estimated 2 million were living and working in the kingdom. With borders closed since March 2020, migrants have no choice but to make the journey illegally. There is no official data on the size of the influx, but experts say one indicator is the number of migrants who have been caught by authorities. In the months after Myanmar's February coup, the number of arrests tripled, according to Thai government figures. It peaked in November with more than 6,000 migrants intercepted, more than a tenfold increase from the 560 people arrested in January.
Stay tuned as ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
We are open for business, giving MSMEs the latest market trends and business opportunities. Open for business, only on Net 25.
Kailangan mo muna magkamali bago ka matuto.
Kasosyal na. Kaya ko sabi sa'yo na gamitin mo yung mga bago na plato.
Oo, ang kinainan, iligpit. Masakit ang umibig.
Ate, mag-crush kayo?
Pinatibok mo puso ko.
Kaya mo na siyang buhayin? Kaya mo yung isang pakainin?
Tingnan mo lang, bantayan mo. Nakakainin ng pusa.
Ready na ba kayong hulaan ang Mr. World Acting Alamin? Ang pahuhulaan ko ay mula sa showbiz. Isa siyang hari.
Bahala ka! Kung sinasabi ko, hindi naman sinasabi.
Funniest Nakaball Videos.
Maraming salamat po, kapatid na Eduardo B. Manalo.
Maraming salamat po sa kapatid na Eduardo B. Manalo. Maraming salamat po kapatid na Eduardo B. Manalo.
Karamiwan na kami po'y hinahamak at tinataboy. Pero buong puso niyo kaming tinanggap at kinupkop. Kung dati, kung saan kami naninirahan, ngayon may permanente na kaming tirahan.
Maraming salamat sa kabuhayang pinagkaloob niyo. Hindi na po kami mangangamba sa aming kinabukasan.
Maraming salamat po sa pagbibigay ng nikasyon sa amin upang matupad na ang aming mga pangarap.
Mahal na mahal po namin kayo.
Welcome back to the program. Asian markets rose in limited trade Tuesday, following another strong lead from Wall Street, fueled by a rebound in tech firms, while comments from Federal Reserve officials eased concerns that it will embark on an aggressive phase of policy tightening. U.S. equities rallied for a second day with plenty of support coming from Apple's blowout earnings report last week, while the current reporting season has proved fruitful despite concerns about inflation and central banks withdrawing financial support. The Wall Street surge came at the end of a volatile month characterized by speculations over the Fed's plans to get a grip on runaway prices, with fears that its new hawkish tilt could see it hike borrowing costs as much as 7 times this year, with a 50 basis point move in March. The Nasdaq soared more than 3%, pairing losses for January to 9%, having at one point been down almost 15% during the month, while the S&P 500 and Dow also chalked up healthy gains, and the positive energy continued in Asia, with Tokyo, Sydney, and Wellington all up. However, business was thin owing to the Chinese New Year that saw Hong Kong, Shanghai, Singapore, Seoul, Taipei, Manila, and Jakarta closed.
Flag carrier Philippine Airlines, or PAL, has appointed Stanley K. Ng, its SVP for airline operations, as the new president and COO of the company. Ng, a son-in-law of billionaire Lucio C. Tan, will sit as the new president and COO of the carrier in an acting or officer in charge capacity, replacing Gilbert F. Santamaria, who helped steer PAL into its Chapter 11 reconstructuring last year. His appointment makes Ng the first pilot to assume the presidency of PAL since the 1960s. He started as an on-ground staff in 2003 before becoming a second officer in 2008. In 2019, he was promoted to SVP. Santamaria is credited for many things in PAL. Most recently, he led the company into its successful restructuring program that freed up PAL from significant amounts of debt and provided the company with liquidity for long-term growth. Santamaria tendered his resignation to airline CEO Lucio Tan last December 2021 after Philippine Airlines received approval from the U.S. Bankruptcy Court of the Southern District of New York on December 17 for its reorganization plan. a turnaround strategy he tendered during pandemic. The airline filed for Chapter 11 in September. Paul said Mr. Santamaria had completed his engagement with Philippine Airlines after successfully leading and completing the Chapter 11 process.
Meanwhile, Thailand will resume its quarantine-free travel scheme from February 1, after the program was suspended due to the fast-spreading Omicron COVID-19 variant. Pandemic travel curbs have hammered the kingdom's tourism-dominated economy, sending visitor numbers dwindling to a trickle. Fully vaccinated travelers will now be able to enter under the Test and Go scheme as long as they take COVID test on the first and the fifth days after arriving. Spokesman for the country's COVID-19 task force, Tawisin Vusayanothin, told reporters. Visitors will have to isolate at a hotel while waiting for their test results and will be required to download a tracking app to ensure they comply with the rules. According to the Bangkok Post, spokesman for the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration, the registration for the revised Test and Go program, which is open to visitors from all countries, will resume on Tuesday with extra measures. Dr. Tawisil noted that travelers are also advised to make sure their COVID-19 or health insurance covers related costs, otherwise they will have to absorb all the expenses themselves. He said the Test and Go program has been revised for precautions against the virus and to help tourism operators.
Philippine Olympic Committee President Representative Abraham Bambol Tolentino joined the entire country in celebrating the historic achievement of the national women's football team, which booked a first ever berth in the FIFA Women World Cup 2023. Malditas beat Chinese Taipei 4-3 in a penalty shootout at the Sri Shiv Chhatrapati Sports Complex in Pune, India. The victory also allowed the Malditas to advance to the Asian Football Confederation Women's Asia Cup, also a first by any Philippine team on the continental stage. With the historic feat, Tolentino said Philippine sports have never been this successful. Tolentino also congratulated the Philippine Football Federation, or PFF, for having accomplished what looked like an impossible dream, noting that we are not a football-loving nation. The PFF is headed by Mariano Nonong Araneta with lawyer Edwin Castanes as Secretary General.
And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations.
And stay updated about the ASEAN region.
I'm Crystal Ann Ballesteros.
And I'm Gila. And
we live in interesting times.
This week, we have again 3 beautiful dishes na enjoy po ako na i-share po sa inyong lahat. Clam chowder. Yes, clam chowder soup. Ang ating pangalawang dish naman, ito ang tinatawag na